Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Monday, 26 May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is strategically maneuvering its economic and technological future with new policy considerations and industry consolidations. Premier Ye has signaled the potential for new economic policy tools. The merger of chipmaker Hygan and server maker Sukuk highlights the computing sector's trend toward consolidation. Guidance for online platform merchant fees is being drafted, and China maintains unique access to rare earth elements from Myanmar. The deployment of AI-powered drones is also enhancing China's operational capabilities. In the automotive industry, Xiaomi is poised to compete with Tesla, introducing the U7 SUV with a range exceeding 760 kilometers, 472 miles. Conversely, BYD shares dropped by 8% after price cuts, which Citi projects could increase dealership traffic by 30–40%. BYD has also launched trade-in incentives. However, the Chinese and Hong Kong stock markets are facing headwinds. Hong Kong stocks retreated from a 2-month peak due to China's economic and earnings challenges. Out-of-stocks and Apple suppliers are contributing to market weakness, further complicated by trade tensions. Turning to Australia, the Chinese ambassador has cautioned against the current lease arrangement of the port of Darwin. In the United States, Jensen Huang noted that U.S. chip restrictions have significantly impacted Nvidia, cutting its China market share nearly in half. Europe's stock markets mostly saw gains after the U.S. delayed imposing tariffs. One instance saw stocks tumble after Trump recommended the tariffs. The potential impact of these tariffs worries Ireland the most. It has the largest trade volume with the U.S. among European countries. European insurers also face $3.5 billion in losses from Los Angeles wildfires. Furthermore, supply cuts at Norway's Trollfield have increased European gas prices. Jim Cramer advises investors to carefully choose between U.S. and European stocks. India's stock markets are currently experiencing a bullish phase, with the Sensex climbing over 455 points consecutively, boosting investor wealth. This positive movement is fueled by strong economic indicators, a record surplus from the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, and decreasing inflation rates. The bond market is also performing well, buoyed by expectations of relaxed monetary policies, despite initial setbacks caused by the RBI's surplus announcement. Grow's application for a $1 billion IPO signals continued vibrancy in the primary market, further stimulated by upcoming IPOs from Leela Hotels seeking the ALDA 3,500 crore and Aegis Vopak. Analysts are paying close attention to Leela Hotels' debt situation as it expands its presence in the luxury travel sector. Investor confidence in India's $5 trillion stock market is high, driven by significant returns. India's strategic priorities include defense investments amid evolving geopolitical dynamics. The government is allocating resources to enhance military technology. The economic forecast for India is positive, with brokerages anticipating a recovery in corporate earnings by fiscal year 2026. Government-owned non-bank financial institutions are projected to grow substantially. The IPO of the National Stock Exchange, NZ, is currently under review by SEBI. Spark has recently started commercial production within India. Furthermore, India is preparing to launch a new weather forecasting model to improve agricultural planning and flood management. Turning to Turkey, the tourism sector is being affected by the ongoing tensions between India and Pakistan, which has led to a decrease of over 10% in Turkish Airlines stock value in the past month. Finally, Bangladesh has recently terminated a $21 million agreement with an Indian shipbuilding company. United States stock exchanges were closed. On Monday, May 26, 2025, for Memorial Day, a day of remembrance for fallen US soldiers. Investors are keenly awaiting US economic data releases, including GDP, PCE inflation figures, and the Federal Reserve meeting minutes, along with Nvidia's earnings report. Rising US Treasury yields and the national debt are causing concern on Wall Street, leading to mixed performance in the stock market. Market sentiment towards US equities is softening, with some analysts suggesting investors reduce US holdings in favor of European markets. However, US stock futures received a boost after President Trump delayed the imposition of 50% tariffs on the European Union, a move that contrasted with the dip seen in Asian shares. President Trump has confirmed US participation in the upcoming G20 summit in Johannesburg, according to South African President Ramaphosa. Trump's trade policies continue to be a major factor in international relations, particularly with the European Union and countries in Asia. The U.S. may also face repercussions for its tax policies, with a proposed revenge tax bill targeting countries whose tax rules the Trump administration opposes. The U.S. shale oil boom is experiencing a slowdown due to the combined effects of Trump's tariffs and decreasing oil prices. In a lighter note, the U.S. secured its first World Hockey title since 1933, defeating Switzerland in the final. Turning to the European Union, European stock markets experienced gains after President Trump announced the postponement of the 50% tariffs previously threatened on EU goods. Additionally, shipping bottlenecks in Europe are raising concerns and sending warning signals to both the U.S. and Asia. In South Korea, auto exports saw a decrease in April, attributed to the ongoing impact of US tariffs. There is also the potential for a U.S. nuclear energy revival, which could provide opportunities for South Korean reactor construction companies. Southeast Asian nations, according to Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, are collaborating to tackle economic hurdles and find solutions to the ongoing civil conflict in Myanmar, which includes considering joint tariff negotiations with Trump. Asian stock markets presented a varied landscape, reacting to rise in U.S. Treasury yields that initially dampened Wall Street and regional performance. As a result, the Hang Seng Index dropped by 1.4% today. However, market sentiment shifted when Trump delayed imposing tariffs on the EU, which strengthened the euro and stabilized Asian markets. The Nikkei saw a 1% gain, while Shanghai rose by 0.3%, Kospi increased by 1.03%, and other markets showed mixed results. May also saw Asian hedge funds regain some ground, increasing their leverage. Furthermore, investment firms are actively pointing out top dividend stock selections within the Asian market. South Korea's stock market saw a 2% increase, topping gains in the Asia-Pacific area after the U.S. postponed tariff implementation on the EU, which further encouraged U.S. futures. Quarterly dividends in South Korea reached a record 5.7 trillion won. Cybersecurity spending among major South Korean companies averages $2.10 million annually. LG Uplus is leading wireless growth among South Korean telecoms, targeting 1 trillion won in profit. OpenAI is growing its presence with a new office in Seoul, its third in Asia, to leverage South Korea's demand for AI and its large ChatGPT user base, which includes a high number of paid subscribers. In 2A2 trade talks between South Korea and the U.S. on April 24th, discussions centered on strengthening trade. Corning is expanding into South Korea's AI data center market by providing high-density optical fibers. Yoon Seok-han is advocating for an independent financial supervisory service to improve consumer protection. The dominant party in South Korea is pushing for the rapid launch of a KRW stablecoin. Citadel Advisors LLC increased its investment in the Franklin FTSE South Korea ETF, Niziar Kafel Korea, by 46,469 shares. a nickname service offered by Starbucks in South Korea, has stirred political controversy. United Kingdom. The UK's financial landscape is currently a mix of successes and concerns. There's a debate over the effectiveness of ring-fencing rules for banks, with some questioning their necessity. London Capital Group, LCG UK, became profitable in 2024 by slashing expenses by 80%. Investors are eyeing potential dividend opportunities in top UK stocks for May 2025. Some analysts are touting certain UK stocks as undervalued investments due to their consistent market outperformance. Company-specific performance is varied, with Diageo's share price facing scrutiny, while another growth stock has seen a 30% surge in value within a month. The UK is also witnessing a surge in popularity of Chinese-made electric vehicles among car buyers. In international relations, the Lord Mayor of London has affirmed Qatar as a crucial investment partner. Tensions have risen as the Kremlin denies any Russian involvement in recent arson attacks within the UKI. A new free trade agreement with the UK has boosted Indian textile producers, exemplified by a 314% increase in share value for Kitex garments. Ukraine-Russia, WHAM. The ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues with persistent attacks and prisoner exchanges. A significant air raid by Moscow resulted in 12 deaths, while Kyiv and Moscow exchanged heavy overnight drone strikes, causing 7 fatalities. Following a major drone and missile strike, both sides conducted a prisoner exchange involving dozens of individuals. Ukraine has implemented a new drone strategy designed to cripple Moscow's airports and inflict consequences on the Russian population. Amidst these events, a Trump envoy has advocated for a ceasefire following a Moscow attack on Kyiv. Former President Trump has characterized Putin as crazy. Saudi Arabia is strategically advancing its economic diversification and financial infrastructure. To this end, the nation issued Sukuk, valued at 60 billion rials, and executed a debt buyback of $16.10 currently, issuing $16.08 billion in new Sukuk. A significant restructuring of 32 billion in Sukuk aimed to fortify Saudi Arabia's debt management strategy and stimulate the domestic debt market. The country's non-oil exports demonstrated a robust 13.4% increase during the first quarter. Recruitment. Platforms are being adopted to facilitate hiring related to the ambitious Vision 2030 program. Furthermore, Nvidia is set to supply 18,000 chips to Saudi Arabia's HUMAIN, which positions the Middle East prominently in AI advancement. Plans are also underway for Saudi Arabia to establish itself as a fashion center, accompanied by economic reforms designed to buffer against external shocks. In religious affairs, 1724, individuals from Bangladesh journeyed to Saudi Arabia for the Hajj pilgrimage. Despite these advancements, the Saudi main index closed at 10,099, reflecting a downturn, and the Tadawul all-share index experienced a 1.69% decrease. On the resources front, Saudi Arabia, in collaboration with Kuwait, has announced the discovery of oil reserves in the North Wafra region. Adding to the financial activity, PanGulf secured a $19 Islamic loan from Saudi Awal Bank. Japan is actively engaged in efforts to bolster its economic standing through various strategies. Nissan is banking on its e-Power, hybrid EV technology to facilitate a financial turnaround. Simultaneously, the nation is promoting its expertise in shipbuilding and land investment. Japan is also in discussions with the U.S. to reach a tariff agreement by the time of the G7 summit. Addressing domestic economic concerns, Japan intends to sell rice stockpiles to halve soaring rice prices, which surged 98.4% in April 25. Real wages in Japan have dropped 2.1% year over year, diminishing the likelihood of a rate hike by the Bank of Japan and influencing crypto market sentiment regarding yen weak. Amidst Japan's worsening debt crisis, Metaplanet, a Bitcoin proxy stock, experienced an 18% surge, becoming a preferred choice for Japanese investors seeking Bitcoin exposure and tax advantages. Furthermore, top Irish entrepreneurs, including Carl Fitzpatrick from Wexford, traveled to Japan for the A Entrepreneur of the Year retreat, marking Ireland's largest unofficial trade mission. The rising Japanese bond rates are posing a threat to capital flow and negatively affecting the stock market in Korea. Beyond these economic considerations, the Oscar-nominated Magic Candies film blends a Korean tale with Japanese animation. Russia and Ukraine exchanged prisoners amidst escalating tensions. Moscow launched a large-scale aerial assault on Kyiv using missiles and drones. Russia's former president declared intentions to seize a buffer zone inside Ukraine. Kyiv retaliated with a drone attack on Moscow, following Russia's overnight strikes. Russia reported downing 96 Ukrainian drones, which briefly suspended operations at some Moscow airports. Former U.S. President Trump labeled Putin crazy and cautioned about Russia's downfall, hinting at more sanctions. The EU is contemplating unfreezing Russian assets to benefit Ukraine, possibly tied to a new sanctions package. Analysts speculate that Russia's weakening war economy might push it toward negotiations. The MOEX index and Russian company share prices experienced activity on May 26, 2025 at 11.1. 1 and 13, 1 and 13, with MSCI, with a particular focus on the financial sector. Australia's stock market saw a mixed performance, ending the period relatively unchanged. Mining and its sector gains were offset by banking sector losses. WiserTech shares jumped following its $10 billion acquisition of eTorp. Canyon Resources, Nufarm, and Paladin Energy also saw positive stock movement. Elders announced increased first-half earnings and revenue. However, Origin Energy's shares declined after it downgraded its forecast for its UK. The Australian dollar hit a 6-month high. Concerns are mounting that stalled investment could jeopardize Australia's energy advantage. Greatland Gold is considering listing on the Australian Stock Exchange. Interest in Australia's iron ore sector is significant. Initial market optimism, spurred by Trump's tariff pullback, was later tempered by new US tariffs, creating market uncertainty. Sweden's Volvo Cars will cut 3,000 jobs. This is part of an 18 billion Swedish krona, $1.89 billion, cost-cutting plan. The plan aims to reduce costs and cash expenditure. South Africa's rand saw gains due to strong gold prices as investors await the central bank's interest rate decision. Pick n Pay reported reduced annual losses and set a goal to break even by 2028. Investec unveiled a $139 share repurchase initiative. PSG Group acquired a 54% stake in Butternut.io. The Stars Shop Fund roadshow drew public interest. During French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Hanoi, France and Vietnam pledged to deepen their collaboration amid rising global instability. Vietnam finalized an agreement to purchase 20 Airbus aircraft, marking a significant step in their strengthened partnership. Moviegoing in the United States and Canada is rebounding due to a wider array of film releases attracting audiences. Meanwhile, a Chinese baby products company is moving forward with its expansion into the United States market. This expansion occurs despite the existing trade tensions between the US and China, highlighting the attractiveness of the United States as the world's largest consumer market. Israel's military strategy involves gaining control over the majority of Gaza in the near future. Economically, Israel is expected to hold steady on interest rates. This decision comes despite inflationary pressures and the continuing conflict. Tragically, recent strikes in Gaza have resulted in significant casualties, including children. Germany is facing speculation about potential pressure from the US and Russia to repair the Nord Stream gas pipelines, leading to questions about the resumption of Russian gas import. In legal matters, 4 former Volkswagen VW managers have been convicted in Germany relating to the diesel scandal, which involved the automaker using defeat devices to manipulate emissions tests. Asia. Indonesia is strategically reducing its dependence on gas and increasing its renewable energy use in its latest power plan. Visiting Chinese State Council Premier Li Chang expressed optimism about Indonesia's economic progress. Singaporean companies increasingly favor Hong Kong for market listings, a trend amplified by Hong Kong's new redomiciliation policy. Malaysia and Singapore are exploring the possibility of importing wind energy from Vietnam, while French President Macron, during his visit to Vietnam, highlighted the importance of energy cooperation between the two nations. Thailand is planning a bid to host a Formula One race in 2028. Hungary has warned that a proposed wage increase is at risk due to the nation's fragile economic state. Poland is becoming an important example of the tension between European integration and nationalistic ideologies. Finland summoned the Russian ambassador to address a recent violation of Finnish airspace. Romania's newly elected president is confronted with substantial fiscal challenges related to budget management. North America. Mexico's incoming president, Sheinbaum, needs to prioritize security measures to effectively combat drug cartels, setting aside partisan politics. Middle East. Chief financial officers, CFOs, in Qatar are currently engaged in discussions focusing on regional risks and opportunities. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.